that's on the meeting today for the most part. We have a few new people. I know Jenny's new on the meeting today. Webb is a part of the Frisco Chamber. We're the women's division, and our 4 pillars are to advocate, educate, empower a community of women, and we support small businesses, mid-sized businesses, large businesses. So anyone that is a woman in business, or you don't even have to be a woman in business. We support women in all areas of life and all seasons of life. So we'd love for you to join us as we, truly want to educate and support our communities that we live in and empower all of us as women to be all that we are meant to be. And we're all here as a team to support each other. This is the last quarterly meeting that we will have for the year. Typically, we would meet in person. We do have large gatherings of women at our attendance at our meetings, up to 90 at times. So once we can all be back face to face, you'll want to learn more and to attend one of our actual in-person lunch meetings, because we do have a really great group, and we all support each other, and we always have great speakers to educate us, for us to, as I say, be all that we can be. We also have monthly socials, and we have been doing a lot of those virtually, but in the last few months, we have gone to in-person on those socials, if you're comfortable with meeting in person. And we alternate each month. One month we'll have an evening social. The next month we'll have a morning social. And so for November the 17th, we're going to have our social a week early due to the Thanksgiving week. But Terry, who's on our council, heads up our socials and finds great places for us to meet and socialize and support our community businesses. And our next web social is a breakfast social. And it's on November the 17th, which is a Tuesday, from 8:30 to 9:30 at Great Harvest Bread Company on Dallas Parkway. So you'll be seeing more information on that, and we'll send out more details as the week goes on and before that meeting. So we'd love for you to join us if you're comfortable doing so. We'll certainly respect the social distancing and what's required by us to keep each other safe. And I wanted to see if there's another couple of things that we are actually doing, and we will continue. I see us continuing to carry this into 2021, is that Webb has selected a couple of nonprofits in the area that are in Frisco to spotlight for November and December. And it's certainly a time where more people are in need than ever, and certainly the holiday season of giving and showing our generosity for all of us who are very blessed to still be employed and not have suffered some of the consequences of the pandemic that we've been through. So the 2 nonprofits that we're highlighting for November and December is Frisco Family Services, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. And go to their website. They have a coat driving process. They are always in need of food for their food pantry. They're always in need of clothing for their retail store. So reach out to them if that's maybe one that you feel like you would like to be a part of. They also need volunteers to help with so many things. And they've been in Frisco for a very long time and are very supportive of our community and had a huge increase in need due to everything that's going on. The second nonprofit that we are supporting is Refresh Frisco, which is wonderful. And they collect donations, and also I think are in need at times for volunteers to help pack up all of their donations to help our students, those that cannot afford all of the needs for cleanliness, as far as shampoo and conditioner, body wash, toothpaste, floss, all of those things that we use every day that are actually very expensive, and sometimes you can't afford those when you need to put food on the table. So they do a great job. Pull up their website, see how you can get involved with them, and help them support our students so that they are more confident and feel good about going to school every day with clean hair and fresh breath and all of the above that it's important to make us feel better about ourselves. Excuse me. And with that being said, I am going to, Tammy, has anybody else joined us that we might want to let them introduce themselves at this point before we roll into the meeting?
Yes, Denise Ackerman joined.
Oh, good. Denise, if you'll give us your name and your business.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Denise Ackerman, and my business is Sage Soul Coaching.
Thank you. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Kathy.
So we're really glad to have everyone today, and we're going to touch base on a really important subject, especially during this time, and something that's ongoing, but more so now than ever. We're very happy to have Jenny Dowdy as our sponsor for this meeting. Jenny's with Keller Williams, and she'll tell you more about that, and also on our web council and involved in many areas of the community. And we're very proud to have her sponsor this meeting today. And we're proud to be continuing our series of education and support on mental health issues. And today we're going to talk about the signs and support of depression and anxiety in adults and children. And we're very proud to have our guest speaker, Christie Goheen, that you just met a few minutes ago. And later we'll be joined by Hailey DeWolfe. So I'm going to turn this over to Jenny, and Jenny will be our moderator for today as well, with a lot of great questions that have been put together. And also we want all of you to be involved and active in this conversation as well. So as you have questions, please put those in the chat room, and then Tammy will make sure that we get those answered for you today. All right, Jenny.
Well, thank you, Kathy, so much. I'm Jenny Dowdy. Jenny knows real estate, and I know of each and every one of you, so you know what I do. And today's topic is so important in today's time. So I'm going to just kind of go by what I do. Later on, we can talk to it. I'll give you a call. But let's jump right into what we're talking about today, because there's going to be a lot of questions. Even with our small amount attending today, I know that each one of us has a question that we'd like to ask these young ladies. So today we have LifePath Systems, and their mission is to serve individuals and families by behavioral health, intellectual, developmental challenges, and they result in stronger communities. The agency was actually created in Collin County Mental Health and Mental Retardation Center in 1986. The Collin County Commissioners Court established the center in response to recommendations from a Blue Ribbon Task Force in residents' unmet needs for mental health and intellectual and developmental disabilities. So today we have Christie Smith Goheen. She is a licensed clinician specializing in working with children and families. She is the program administrator of Child Adolescent Services at LifePath Systems in Collin County and senior project director of Collin County Systems of Care. She graduated with a master's degree in social work from the University of Texas, Arlington, and has since enjoyed practicing in early childhood services and community mental health. She is certified in multiple parent training programs and is dedicated to improving and social emotional health of all children. Next, we have Hailey DeWolfe. Hailey will be joining us a little bit later, I think, so is a qualified mental health professional working in the community education and outreach specialist for LifePath Systems for Collin County. She graduated from the University of Arkansas, and with her bachelor's in social work, will be pursuing her master's of public administration. She has worked both during direct services in schools and youth and families, as well as numerous years of experience in nonprofit and policy sectors. She's passionate and committed to educating the community on mental health and working to reduce the stigma associated with mental health. So today we've got LifePath Systems talking to us about some of the areas. Now, I encourage you, when you're listening to some of these questions that we've had put forth to us already, go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. Tammy, at the end of the meeting, when we've covered some of these questions and we have open questions, you'll have a chance to ask your question as well. I'm sure you'll have several. So let's jump right in there. Is Hillary on yet, or is she still coming?
You mean Hailey?
Okay. I mean Hailey. I'm sorry, Hailey.
Yeah, Hailey's going to be here towards the end. She's at another meeting, but she's going to jump right in when she can.
Okay, well, then, Christie, I'm going to put these questions to you, and you do your best. And if
I'm ready.
it's something that, okay, that Hailey could answer later on, go ahead and say this is a Hailey question.
Yes, I will.
So here's the big elephant. What is your biggest struggle during these challenging times? We have so many people right now losing jobs, extended family illnesses, loneliness, school and drug use, homeschooling children, physical and mental abuse. The list could go on. What do you see happening today?
That is the big question. It says that the host has stopped my video. Can you hear me?
I can still hear you.
Oh,
We can
okay.
hear you.
Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, so the answer to that is really kind of all of the above, and it depends on the person. What we see here in a community mental health center is obviously people come to us with a lot of mental health challenges, and that might be their biggest issue at the time. We also do crisis services. In this time, we've kind of seen what I'd say is like a shift. At first, everything was very, there was just like immediate need for how are we going to pay our bills? How are we not really knowing what was going to happen? And then things have kind of shifted. We actually saw a decline in people in the kid world for people wanting and needing services because a lot of their stressors that were external were not really there anymore. And then they've kind of popped up and surfaced again as time goes on. And now we've seen kind of an increase. And with that is, there's food scarcity, there's housing scarcity. Things kind of shift and change over time. And we see like different things at different times, basically. So people need help with education support, like they need help with just basic things like being able to have internet access or tablets or things like that. Those kinds of resources are all things that we're seeing.
So Christie, I understand what you're saying. So as you pivot right now, you had mentioned that you're seeing so many things that you have to partner or outsource with. How are you doing that in today's world?
That's a good question. So we have different groups within, so LifePath Systems is, we have multiple programs here. So we do have supported housing. We have a supported employment program for adults. We have, case managers that work on providing resources within the community. We have a resource group that their job is just to go out and dig for stuff in the community and kind of tell us and come back to what's new. CallinCares.org is a really good resource. They kind of update that pretty regularly. And that has a list of every single agency in place that can help within Collin County. Lots of times we get emails like on a particular day, an agency will say, somebody dropped off all of this stuff and we have all of this food here today, and it's only going to be here from this time to this time. And then we have to get the word out to our staff and then to our people that are in need and say, here are these resources today. Can we help you? So it's really changed. Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Oh, no, you're fine. Christy, I can jump in here a little bit. Hello. So one of the things that we're doing currently in this climate with COVID, when we were talking about our community resources, is we're really focusing on creative outreach. So making sure that with our partners, we're strengthening them in the best way that we can, whether that's assisting them in doing virtual trainings for their staff when it comes to mental health first aid, which is one of our programs, or doing virtual crisis counseling for individuals that might be needing it. We are also utilizing a grant from FEMA currently. It's called Texans Recovering Together. And so this program allows for us to do crisis counseling with individuals who are specifically impacted by COVID. And this is a really amazing opportunity for us to partner with a lot of those community resources because, like Christy was saying, we work with people from supported employment. We work with a lot of nonprofits giving food. And so this program and this grant funded program that we're doing is really about connecting those individuals to those resources that we work with and to those community organizations and community collaborations that have already existed, and then strengthening those, as well as getting the word out to those individuals who need it, especially in this time, and doing so in a safe way, in a safe and practical way. So really trying to make sure that all of our individuals who are working with this program understand things like how to utilize a Zoom, or how can we better function just over the phone, or make sure that we're doing contactless deliveries when it comes to giving promotional material or things like that. So just kind of getting really creative, and then along with helping to strengthen those community partners that we work with and getting the word out to those individuals who need it, whether they are already individuals who are working and going through our services, or individuals who are just being impacted by the current situation. So we're really here to help the community in a larger way, especially right now. So.
That's a great way. One of the questions that I'm asking in a minute, but one of the questions I want to ask immediately is, how did you get the FEMA grant? Do you have grant writers on staff, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so we are really lucky to have an amazing grant writer on our staff for LifePath systems. And this is something that we applied for at the beginning of the year. So it's through FEMA and SAMHSA, and it is specifically targeted. So it is administered through the state. So the State Health and Human Services. And then we're notified as the local mental health authority about this opportunity, and we're able to apply for that grant.
Great. Well, you talked about actually connecting with people. What is the number one way, number two, and number three way that you're actually connecting? Is it internet, in person, on phone? How are you connecting with them?
So the answer is really all of the above. Our job is to meet the needs of our individuals and where they're at. So if that means that they need to be seen in person, then some of our people that have a higher level of care and need, we will see them in person. You know, we provide all the PPE to our staff and everything that they'll need to be able to make that happen. And then some people just want to do Zoom sessions because they're more comfortable with that. And then other people sometimes need to do telephone services because Zoom is down at the time, or they don't really know how to use it. We found some really challenging things like, teaching somebody that's 70 years old now how to, talk to her prescriber and her psychiatrist over Zoom is really a challenge. It's like, okay, this isn't something we really prepared for, but we have to adapt and, figure out how are we going to help this person, because this is a need that's out there.
Well, are you seeing an increase in a certain age group or a certain demographic?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily know that it's a certain age group. We have seen, like I said earlier, we saw a decline in the number of people coming in. Even though we never shut our doors, our walk-in clinic was always open, but it could be attributed to the level of comfort that other people had with that. But then we've also seen over the last few months that has increased. And so that's whether it's in adult services or children's services. We don't really break that down by age, but we just know we've seen an increase in each of those programs.
When you say that you're open and available, are you open 24/7? And what parts of you are open and what parts are you available?
That's a good question. So our open access, where you would do an intake, is open from 8 to 5. Now, having said that, that means that people that are just getting started and just walking in for services, we have a walk-in clinic, and that's open from 8 to 5. And then for once you're in services, it looks a little bit different. Then it's really kind of based on what your need is, what your schedule is. We have some, I'm in child and adolescent services. So of course it's hard to see kids during the day. So we have a lot of people that work in the evenings or may do Saturday groups or something like that. With adults, it's usually, they can usually see people during the day. We do have 24-hour crisis services. So our crisis hotline is open 24 hours, and those services are open pretty much all the time. So
I know we're overwhelmed with COVID. That is, the pandemic has affected us all. What about your non-COVID people that you had serviced before? How are they?
When you say non-COVID people, do you mean people that have not had COVID, or do you mean people that are not affected by that?
Maybe your regular clientele that you had serviced before and other needs, is COVID overwhelming all the people, or is it becoming blended? How, is there any differentiation with COVID, or is it just become all COVID?
So that's interesting because it's not, I'll say that it's not what we thought it would be. So what we thought was that kids would be really, really worried all the time about it. And the feedback that I've received from my case managers and staff is that they're not really so worried about that for themselves. It may be that they're worried for their parent or their grandparent or something. Now, that kind of goes back to when we think about that, think about where they're at developmentally. There's a egocentricity to kids that's pretty natural and normal. And so, they may be less worried about themselves. I think, the majority of our kids have wanted to go back to school and have wanted to interact with their peers and stuff like that. So I think it's less of that and more anxiety or worry about other things. It may be their family members or, other stressors.
Okay, well, assessing their needs, and that's what you had said you're basically doing through Zoom, the phone, in person. So I've got some specific questions here that some of our audience had asked us first.
Okay.
So one of our people had said that she's worried about someone that she knows and struggling with mental health issues. What should I do to help her?
That's probably the question as a social worker I get asked the most, professionally and personally. Usually somebody will call and say, what can I do? Where can I get services? The most simple answer that I tell people is just ask how they're doing. Like if you suspect that person is not doing very well or is struggling, then just ask, how can I help you? What do you need? And then, reach out to, depending on what their insurance is like or what their situation is like, then you kind of go from there and kind of determine what to do after that. But really just first identifying, is that a struggle for that person? Do they really need help? What clues are they sending you that says that they may be having mental health issues?
Well, would that be something that if we knew more about LifePath systems, would we direct them to? When you say about insurance, would they contact a specialist before contacting somebody like you?
So if they have private insurance, one thing is that you always have case managers that work in your insurance with your insurance typically. And so that's usually where I tell people to start if they need something really specific, like call your insurance company, check with your case manager to see what's available to you. And then if you need community mental health services, you can always reach out to LifePath. That's always an option. Like we can always point you in the right direction.
Well, that's good. Another question that has come up too is, how do we handle a person in denial? Maybe it's drugs or alcohol or abuse that they don't think that they're doing verbally. How do we help somebody in denial?
So that's also a really good question. I don't know how familiar this group is with the stages of change in substance use, in the substance use world, but there is a model called the stages of change. And so typically it'll start with like pre-contemplation and contemplation. It's really it's really up to that person and whether or not they it's their agency as to whether or not they're really going to get help for that, and I know that that's hard, but there are people that think about they may think about it, they may think, oh, I think I'm drinking too much, or maybe okay, so they might be contemplating it. That might be where they're at right now. They may be in that pre-contemplation phase, and what actually gets them to some kind of action and through those stages of change, it really may be it could be a whole host of different things. The idea that people may need to hit rock bottom. Some people don't need to hit rock bottom. They just may be thinking like, hey, COVID's going on and I think I'm drinking, a few more beers lately because I'm kind of bored and maybe I need to go do something else. And that may be as far as it goes. But if they're truly in a denial phase, it's really hard to kind of, I don't want to use the word force anybody to face that, but that really is kind of the word I would use. It's hard to tell them they have to. It's really up to them.
Well, Christie, I know you talked about the stages and the model. Is there a way that you can briefly tell us what those stages are?
Oh, so yes. So the first stage is pre-contemplation, okay? And that may be, like it's just, it could be, and I'll use it like it may just be, it may not even be something that you're really thinking about, okay? But you get to, you get to this point where you're maybe thinking like, I noticed my girlfriend isn't hanging out with me as much. It may just be like little things that kind of click, okay? And then you get to the contemplation phase, which is you may be actively thinking about, okay, well, I really need to do something about this, okay? And you may have more ideas. You may start looking up, like if it's alcoholism, well, then you may start looking up where is there a meeting or where is there a center I can go to. But you maybe haven't really taken action yet, okay? And then there might be the preparation stage where now you're really starting to really do something. So now you're starting to arrange your schedule, or you're starting to think about, if I need to go into an inpatient facility, who's going to take care of my kiddos or something like that. Now we're in an actual preparation stage, okay? And then there's the action stage where you're really actually doing it and you're living it and you're, actively doing something about it. And then there's a maintenance phase. And that's the basics of it. It's much more detailed than that, but that's the basics of it. And you may move
those are some
in those stages as well. So I may not go linear.
Right. Mm-hmm. And those are important. Who can we call? Or these stages, although we can say that we recognize this in somebody else or maybe even ourselves, but taking these stages, is there somebody that we could call at LifePath saying that we're going through these stages? Can you help us?
Yes, of course. You can always call LifePath. We have a substance use disorder program. And so they can get a screening for, sometimes somebody may be telling them that there is an issue or something, and they may truly not have an issue. So it really just depends on that assessment, and that screening will really kind of pinpoint whether or not they need some help. And then at that point, they can determine whether or not there's a recommendation for like inpatient or outpatient services. But yes, they can come to LifePath, they can call LifePath, and then they would have a screening and intake for that.
Is that screening something that is we pay for, or is that screening something that, how do you pay for that?
So again, it kind of goes back to, they'd have to do a full financial, where they go through their financial paperwork and their insurance paperwork and stuff like that. That is determined on a case-by-case basis. So we have some that's, some people that may be fully funded because they have no outside resources. And then there may be some people that, they have insurance and there's another place that might be better for them to go to.
So is Medicaid, do you take Medicaid?
We do take Medicaid. Most of our kiddos are on Medicaid, but we do take Medicaid.
Okay. Another question, of course, this gets into, again, recognizing some of those areas of helping people. And so what is the stage that sometimes you see somebody contemplating taking their own life or doing something destructive?
So what is the stage or what is the age?
That's a good question
That
too.
was one of
What
the
is the
questions that
stage?
was on
But
the list.
yeah,
What age? So
Mhm.
the stage or age? Okay, so that's a good question. So I typically tell people, so we have a training that we do here for our staff. It's called Assist, and it's a suicide prevention training. And so, and Hailey does mental health first aid. Assist is very focused, narrowly focused on just suicide intervention.
Yes.
But what we teach people is we want to look less at age or groups or events. We want to look more at what are the clues and the signs that somebody is sending you. And so it's kind of like being a detective. And if somebody is sending out, we call them like invitations to talk about mental health or suicide, then you want to look at that more than you do age. Like if somebody, a very young kiddo can say, I want to kill myself, and not really understand and comprehend what that really means or what that entails. And somebody might say, oh, they're suicidal. They may not technically understand what that means. So I don't look at age so much as I do, what is the behavior? What are the clues that somebody's sending me that they're in distress? What are those invitations that they're sending me to talk to them about this? And so we kind of focus more on that. And there's a purpose for that too, because if we only focus narrowly on an age or a group or something, then we might miss somebody that's really sending us some clues that they need some help. So.
Okay. So when we're dealing with the fears and the anxieties of school-age children, I mean, anywhere from 6 to 16 years old, who are worried about their future, what are you telling people to, or parents or the kids to talk about? How are you getting them to talk?
So, 6 to 16, so that's a big varying age group. 6-year-olds, obviously you're not going to deal with them and engage with them in the same way that you would a 16-year-old. A 6-year-old is really you address their anxieties and fears a lot more through like play and showing interest in their interests. 16-year-olds are more likely to tell you about that. Now some 16-year-olds are closed down, or I don't want to talk to anybody. And again, it's a challenge to figure out how do I get through to this person. But usually, again, I go back to teenagers are pretty egocentric, and so it's all about them. So if you can figure out, and that's normal, that they're supposed to be that way. That's the stage of development. But so if you can figure out how to talk to them, what are their interests, what is it they like, then that's the starting point for them. With kids, it's usually through play and activity and stuff, but and then just showing a genuine interest in what are kids read that really well. That's what I've found professionally. Like they know if you're interested in them and you're interested in playing with them and care about them. They're pretty good. They got a pretty good read on that. So.
And that helps them open up.
Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. If if your expectation for a 6-year-old that's in distress is for them to just sit down and be quiet and just listen to everything you say, I don't know how many 6-year-olds you've met. That's really probably not going to happen, so it's, really just being open and genuine and, interested in them. And that helps, and it may just be a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm. As something as simple as asking a child to put on a mask and explain to them why. How do you phrase that? So again, it's kind of getting on their level and kind of explaining it to them. I have a bunch of resources that I'll email to you about how to talk to kids about COVID. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, one of the things I love, God love them, is Sesame Street. They'll explain everything to you from COVID to grief to, they've got videos. I
have heard that.
Elmo will explain everything you need to know in this world. So for little kids, it's like just kind of getting on their level and explaining that safety part to them in any way that you would any other safety issue, similar to You know, why do we hold hands when we cross the road, right? You know, in a very similar way, using things that they understand.
That's great. I love that. I completely forgot about Sesame Street. That's a
Oh,
that's
yeah,
a great.
go on there. Everything you need to explain to a kiddo, Elmo will do for you, and you can start there.
No. Okay. So perhaps you've got some children that have AD or HDAD issues, and do we see that today's overstimulus, you know, being at home, eating too much, iPads, tablets, is that adding to their anxiety?
So that was I read through that question. So that's an opinion question, but really the data tells us that, and if you look at the National Institute of Mental Health, the data really tells us that it's a brain issue. It's an issue with impulsivity, with the part of your brain that controls your impulses. Okay. Now, that being said, can putting down the iPad and focusing on quiet time and, you know, kind of just sitting and being, kids with ADHD have a hard time doing that. So is putting down the iPad and focusing on learning how to make lists and tasks and accomplish tasks and go through some of that and go through some skills, that might be more helpful. But, you know, am I the person that's going to tell everybody, hey, you need to tell your kids to get rid of the iPad? I'm not going to be that person, because that's a parenting choice. And but I will say these things help with those brains that have trouble with impulsivity, if that makes sense. And so we can use these skills to help. And if we practice these more and spend less time doing this and really doing some of the stuff that's good for us, then that's probably going to be a little bit more helpful for us.
Do you have a resource online for that, or workbooks or anything like that that some of our members could resource?
Yeah, there is. I can send you a link for that, for some activities that are free activities. Yeah, I can send you a list for that. And of course, I always say, you know, you want to talk to your doctor. You want to make sure that you're
Right.
not diagnosing anybody, but that you've gone through your doctor first. But yes, we do have some for that.
And these not necessarily for kids with challenges at all. These are just general for kids overall, because we're seeing so much of them homeschooling and doing so many things at home by themselves. So if there are resources, we'd love to share them with other people.
Oh yeah, I've got a ton of them. I kind of gathered them up this weekend, and I'll email them to you so that you have access to some of the you know, some of the professional resources and things that we've had that have come down the way that we think are useful.
Okay, I'm going to go back up to one of the questions that you'd answered about that you have places for people to go. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Places for people to go.
With either during the day or day services, or if they're in a issue or abuse that they need to get away quickly, or do you have any out services like that there's some place for people to go? Okay,
so if they have if there's a crisis, then, and I'll share, I've got our information for our crisis line. So if there's a crisis, then, you know, you want to call the crisis line. And we don't expect everybody to be able to do a crisis assessment. Rely on the experts to do that. So you can call the crisis line if you think there is a crisis. Now, after that, if you think, oh, you know, I think I've really been depressed, or I think I'm feeling really panicky about all of this stuff, then you can come into our services for an intake. And at that point, you know, we would determine if that person is qualified for services, and if that person, you know, at what level of care that would be at. So if we have a client that is already in services or is escaping a, you know, domestic violence situation or something like that, then we're going to reach out to some of our partners for that at that point. So that might be the Family Place, or that might be Hope Store here in town. So, you know, we don't have we have a crisis respite unit for people that are in a mental health crisis, but we don't provide any housing for people that are escaping abuse and that
Okay.
kind of thing. So at that point, we would partner with another agency for that.
Can you review the financial qualifications?
So everything that you need to do a financial assessment is on our website. So with adults, basically it just depends on a lot of different things. It could depend on income. It could depend on, whether or not there are an excessive amount of bills or some kind of event that's happened. Everybody's situation, again, is different, but it would be determined when you come in for your intake. So you just have all your paperwork and your, whether it's your check stubs, and if you don't have any, then that's fine too. And then we kind of determine what your financial situation is and what your ability to pay is, or what your insurance is. It depends on a lot of different factors.
Okay. So I see on your website that you have many opportunities for employment. Is that an unusual number for employment opportunities?
We're growing. The growth in behavioral health is it's just skyrocketed from when I first started, and so this is pretty typical. Right now, we've been growing exponentially year after year, and it's more opportunity, but Collin County is also growing too. And so we provide services to everybody in, Collin County. That's our territory. So yes. And then we also have other divisions that provide services in Grayson County and Rockwall. So it's like, yeah, that's pretty typical for us.
How about volunteers? Do you work with volunteers?
Hailey might know more about the volunteer services, but I got some information from Diane Caslow about our volunteer services. But yes, we do have volunteers. We have about, I think she said about 40 of them, maybe 43 volunteers right now. So, but yes, we do. They go through a process with with Diane Caslow, and who, put us in contact with you, and then, they go through their background check and all of that, and then they're trained. And, but I think whatever area they want to work in, we just see, do we have volunteer opportunities at that level?
Is that on your website that somebody,
Yes,
if they were interested in volunteering?
If you're interested in volunteering, I think Hailey, do you know if there's an application that they fill out? Is she still on here? I don't know what happened to her, but yes, if there's so volunteer, oh, that's a good question. What do volunteers do? So some of our volunteers, we've had volunteers in the past that have worked with our military veterans. We've had volunteers, when I was in ECI, we had volunteer translators, which was pretty awesome because we could take a volunteer translator with us. I'm frozen. We could take a volunteer translator with us to a session. So it was really nice to be able to have a volunteer that spoke Mandarin in the room with you. It was pretty awesome. So we've got volunteer opportunities for many different things.
Great. Now I just want to get a little bit more information about what percentage of revenue is not federal, state, or local taxes, and what is the source?
Okay, so we earn 11% of our total budget by private pay, private insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, grants, and fundraising. And then anything other than that, you'd probably have to go through Diane to figure out the breakdown. In children and adolescent services, most of our funding is through Medicaid. We have a lot of kids that are on Medicaid, but yes.
How do you raise funds outside of these federal and state taxes? What are other ways?
A LifePath Foundation, they do fundraising for us, and they have one major gala event every year. It's the Sweet Dreams event that'll be virtual this year on February 11th, next year. And then we also participate in North Texas Giving Day, and we have some smaller events that we do too. And then this year we are the beneficiaries of the McKinney Music Festival, which is sponsored by Tufts. Okay. So we have several fundraising events.
Okay. And then we're going to open it up for questions. And also the last question I want to ask is, how can we help?
Oh, that's a good question. So how you can help? So I think it goes back to, you know, reaching out to those people in your inner circle. We have a lot of people that are pretty isolated now. And if there's somebody that you haven't heard from in a while, or you're worried about, or you're thinking about, that's one way to help. And then the other, community-wide, is, you know, what is it you feel like, you know, we have these awesome ladies that started sewing masks for us at the beginning of all this, because we had no masks. We had no access to masks. And it was like they started sewing masks up for us and brought them to us. We have another group of people that, you know, make blankets for us, that we can give blankets to our kiddos when they come to services. So I think it's what do you want to do, and how, you know, how far are you willing to go? It can be as simple as donating food. There's a lot of food scarcity right now, is what I've noticed. I get a lot of emails about that. So it can be as simple as that.
Okay. Okay. Well, Tammy, I'm going to open it back up to you to see if we've got any questions on the chat, or some of the people on the Zoom today, if they have questions. Yeah, thank you so much for answering those questions. I really appreciate all the information, and then again, sharing those resources that you'll email to us, and then we'll of course put out to our Women Enhancing Business. And Christy and Hailey, we do appreciate it. Tammy, if you want to take it over now.
Okay, well, we did not have anybody. Terry put one question in there that Christy was kind enough to answer on the fly. So does anybody have any questions? I gotta say, there was a lot of information. You covered everything. Jenny, you did a fantastic job covering all aspects. And Christy, you did a fantastic job answering all the questions, because I had 3 or 4 questions and you touched on every single one of them. So thank you both.
You're welcome.
But I don't know if nobody has typed anything. If there's anything out there y'all want to ask now. They're all there. We just made it so that we could just see you two.
Oh, that's fine.
For the oh, she's talking about the social.
Oh, your social event. Okay.
Yes, we are having a social in just a couple of weeks. Oh no, that's next week. That's next week, not next month, Jennifer.
Next week, yes.
It's Kathy, and I do have a question.
Okay.
So the question I have is, when you said to approach someone you think maybe having an issue, since, I can start my video now. Okay, so the problem that I see is I don't have any experience. I don't have any training or schooling or anything like that. So if I go and ask them and they start, you know, down the path of where they really need some assistance and stuff, all I can do is listen, right? I mean, I'm not going to solve their problems, so that I shouldn't, like, hey, I can solve your problems. What, you know, let me solve your problems. What can you tell us to do in that situation if we ask them and they go down that situation? Because if I were to say, well, you know, you need to talk to somebody in the hotline to really go deeper down, I mean, I might shut them up completely. You know, this is a real fine line of I could be a cause of something worse, you know, versus me being a help. So
that's a good question. So being the cause of something worse, first of all, I will say there are a lot of people that say, I'm afraid to talk about like suicide or mental health because I'm afraid I'll put ideas in their head or something. And that is not really possible. I always tell people, if that were the case, if our powers of persuasion were so high, I would be just walking up to people saying, give me your paycheck today, and they would do it. So that's not really how it works. But that's a good question, because yeah, you may ask the question and like, they may say, yeah, I really am. So what are you prepared to do? At that point, you know, you're right. You're not a licensed clinician or anything like that. You can't do an assessment or make that determination. But, you know, if that person tells you, you know, and I know, I thought it said that you live in South Carolina. Is that where you live? Okay, so, you know, if that's if you're interested in being able to do that, then maybe there's, you know, a mental health first aid place that you might want to be trained at. You know, there might be somebody offering it there in South Carolina that you might want to be trained at. But in our world, we call it what's our level of comfort being a caregiver. And so if you're not comfortable with that part of the role, if it does go down that road, that may be when you hand it off to somebody else that is. And so you find a professional. If that person has really told you, you know, yeah, I'm not doing good, and here's why, and you've opened it, you know, you've opened that door, then, you know, at that point, you can always involve any kind of crisis services that you need to, you know, which you would do with anybody. You know what I mean? If you had anybody that you saw, if you saw somebody that had fallen down and hit their head, okay, you might not have been prepared to be a caregiver at that time, right? That was not what you were looking to on that day, but you're going to go and call 911 and help that person and let the experts take over at that point. So that's a good question. But if it's somebody that you haven't really heard from, or like it's like, hey man, you sound really down, like you sound really negative, and it sounds like you've got some COVID fatigue, what's going on? That's, you know, sometimes people just need to talk or vent about that. You know, that's happening to a lot of us now.
That is great information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And okay, so when people call the hotline, is a therapist answering the call, or are they volunteers? And if they're volunteers, how are they trained?
So that's a good question. It's, if you're calling the crisis line, then it's a qualified mental health professional. So that person has gone through the training that's necessary. Now it could be a therapist on there, but they're probably not going to be practicing therapy. So this is where I'll let Hailey kind of step in a little bit, because we do have this Texans Recovering Together. And this is really unique because from what I understand, we have people calling and they just want somebody to talk to and to vent to that day. And you're not providing any medical information, you're not providing your personal information, you're just kind of getting that person to talk to. And then if it needs to be escalated somewhere else, it can go there. But, you know, we have teenagers that call that. We've got all kinds of people that call just to be able to have somebody talk to. And it specifically was, you know, put in place after COVID started. Hailey, are you still on there? Hailey.
She's on, but she's muted and she doesn't have video, and I've requested, so
I don't know where she's at.
She might be in a dead spot.
If I can share my screen, I'll go ahead and share that too. But I've also got that pamphlet to email to you all. And it's really just a unique program because you don't have to provide any special information or anything, you know, and you have somebody to talk to.
And you said this is Texans for Texas Referring Together?
It's called Texans Recovering Together. And we've had this in our, like if you get the community impact letter and stuff, then, it's screen sharing has been disabled, but I can go ahead and email it to you too. But it's experiencing anxiety, sadness, isolation, loss of employment or financial burdens, or if you just need to talk to somebody, there's a telephone number that you can call. It's open Monday through Friday, and they've got linkage to after hours, and it's the Texans Recovering Together. It's a crisis counseling program, and you know, it's just available to anybody to be able to use. So, which is great.
Okay, and I'm not sure if you answered this earlier. I will tell you, I am not good at multitasking, trying to keep everybody online and reading and listening at the same time, so I apologize. But the question is, what are some signs of that a person is suicidal, and how do you handle those signs?
Okay, so signs that a person is suicidal. So like I said earlier, we kind of call them invitations to kind of for us to be able to talk about it. So some of those signs and invitations might be, they could be an event that's happened. It could be a reaction that you see to something. You know, if it really could be the smallest or the biggest of things. So it can be somebody that just seems really, really down and doesn't seem like themselves, or it can be somebody that is giving away all their personal possessions and items. I don't want to limit it to one thing, but I can say it can be as big or as small as something that but we tell people, like, look at your intuition, look for those clues. I mean, just look for those. Sometimes it can be something really, really super small, and, you know, don't be afraid to ask that question sometimes, you know, like, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? You know, and that might lead to something else, like you said, Kathleen, but it might not. It might just be, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. I got COVID fatigue. I, you know, have gained 20 pounds and I'm really looking to figure out how I can stop eating cookies all day. Okay. But it might lead to something else. And the signs are, they're this big and sometimes they're this small is the best way I can say it. And so how you handle those signs is at what level, again, that you feel comfortable being a caregiver to somebody else that might be experiencing that. And some of us are really comfortable with it. And some of us are like, I do not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, but I will call 911 for you, or I will call somebody else, or I will call my sister that's a social worker and ask her what to do, or whatever. And that's okay.
That's great information. And I agree with you. I actually, when I was in college, had a friend who tried to commit suicide, and I did see all of the signs, and I was constantly on him about it. But I will tell you from personal experience, he did not succeed. I mean, he went to the hospital, but he survived. But you can't change their mind by what you ask or what you say or what you do. They're either in that frame of mind or they're not. And but I also know that if they speak to you, then they are wanting your help.
That's a great point. That is what we say in our assist suicide training all the time. First of all, we preach keeping you safe for now. And if they're talking to you, that is evidence that they are not ready to do it. That's perfect. That's absolutely what we say all the time. If they're there talking to you, you have a shot.
Yes, perfect. Well, what about help for parents who have a child that is suicidal?
It's, you know, for us at LifePath, we have a unique program where we have family partners and peers that offer support to families. That's not something you get in the private practice world. But at LifePath, we really do believe in like recovery coaches, and those people are models for families that have experienced some of these things or have kiddos with mental health issues and things. So that's some support that we can offer families. But for parents that have kiddos that are suicidal, that's a really scary, there's such a scary place for a parent to be at. And, you know, teenagers are hard, but having a teenager that is hurting and is suicidal can be heartbreaking. And so those parents need support. They need support too, you know. And so at LifePath, that's what we try to do. I supervise a lot of family partners and peers, and that's kind of one of the things that we try to bring to those parents to give them hope and also kind of give them some guidance on where to go and where to find resources. Again, I fall back on the best advice that I ever received before I became a professional and I was raising a teenager was, you don't know anything about this, so you need to call somebody that does. There's no harm in doing that. You know, if you're kiddo and that parent's kiddo is really not doing well, they're going to tell you. And then if they are and they're okay, then they're going to tell you that too. And so there's no problem. I get it that they're scared, but you're really not going to create a bigger problem by seeking help and services and stuff. You're going to either get validation for what you already think is going on, or you're going to, somebody's going to say, no, it's really, pretty typical, and there might be some depression or something else going on.
That's perfect. Well, I believe that is all the questions we have for you. Thank you so much. I will turn it back over to Jenny and Kathy.
Well, I appreciate the candid questions and answering. We put you on the spot, but you answered a lot of our questions. We'll look forward to receiving the information that you're going to share of the brochures or anything that you could help us with. Thank you so much. We so appreciate it. And let Hailey know that we appreciate her her part of it that she could participate in, but you jumping in there, Christie.
No problem. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back to Kathy then. Thank you so much for allowing me to moderate today's meeting. And again, Jenny Knows Real Estate, here for any of your real estate and resource needs. It's not always about real estate. Sometimes it's just something that you may need. Let me help.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Christy, for the great information.
You're welcome.
And we appreciate your time today. We appreciate all the resources, and know that this was recorded today. So we are going to share this with our web email addresses. So our list of email addresses, and we will also, once you send us that additional information, we will share that as well. So that's lots of good resources for us to send out. And, because there's times where people may know of someone, even if they may not have been able to join us today. So it'll be good resources for us to send out and share with others in the community. And we still appreciate your time and all the good work that you're doing.
No problem.
Well, I know we're going to probably wrap up a little bit early today, which I'm sure most of you will be happy about, because I think that we were talking about this early. Everybody's a little burned out on Zoom meetings, I think. So we so appreciate every one of you joining us today. And just know that we will follow up with additional information. If you have any questions about web, more questions about the chamber, feel free to reach out to Tammy Alexander, who's been working with us today at the chamber, and she'll be happy to answer any questions. Also, feel free to reach out to any of the web council members, and we'll be happy to meet with you, talk with you, email you, and help you with any of the questions you may have. And then we'll be sending out additional information on items that can support our two nonprofits that we're highlighting as well, because I can see there's some questions that we're spotlighting. So we'll send out some additional information on that as well. And feel free to reach out with any questions. And unless someone else has something to share, I think that probably wraps it up. It was a great meeting. Thank you again.